Hey everyone, welcome along. There's some music coming up very soon, but first, I've realised something important. For the last couple of years, I've hardly shown you a massive part of what I actually do as a composer. This channel has become very focused on media music, but it's not the whole picture. It is not everything that I do as a composer. So today, I'm properly opening up the classical concert music side of my work, and I'm going to take you through a brand new commission from literally the first note to the very premiere of it over the next few weeks. Since I started this channel a couple of years ago, it's mostly been me working in Logic, looking at templates, mock-ups, reviewing libraries and instruments, all that sort of thing. And I'm so grateful that you've come along for that, because I love that world and I love working in media music. But media music doesn't fully represent me as a composer and a musician. I write contemporary classical concert music. It's where I started. I write media music. I write for theatre. I teach. And I collaborate with performers and ensembles all the time. If you were someone looking to commission a string quartet, a chamber piece, a choral work, whatever it might be, you wouldn't see enough of that on this channel that reflects that side of my output, and I really want to correct that. And if I'm being really honest, I think I've let the algorithm kind of scare me a little bit. I've worried that if I post concert music content, it'll confuse this channel. But I actually think a lot of you, I really hope, will be interested in all the facets of composing today, not just one lane. I hope you're interested to see what it's like to be a composer working in the 21st century and all that entails. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'm not pivoting away from media music at all. That is a definite. I'm not stopping the look-throughs and Logic and all that stuff. I'm going to be treating both sides of my work as equally important because I think they really are. What I will do is make it clearer. I'll use different playlists. I'll label things properly. There will be videos that are clearly media focused, videos that are clearly concert, classical focused. And then there'll be videos that sit somewhere in the middle, like creativity, workflow, sanity, procrastination, writing consistently. Those sort of things apply to all facets of work and being a composer and musician today. So yes, if it genuinely doesn't work, if it confuses the audience, you guys, I can always split into a separate channel later on. But that's not the plan right now. Right now, the plan is one channel with a clearer structure of what I'm going to offer you. So to make this real, I'm going to bring you into a new commission I've got, and this is for Hammonds Brass Band. It's just been confirmed, contract signed. It's for a big anniversary they've got coming up, and it's being premiered in June this year and then being recorded for CD as well. And here, I suppose, is the key part. I haven't written a single note of it yet, quite scarily. Not one. I don't even have a title yet. All I know is it's an opening piece for a concert. It's going to last about 4 or 5 minutes long. And that does tell me a few things. You know, it has to be celebratory, rhythmically charged, uplifting, exciting. There are perhaps a few words to describe what this piece might be. And I think it's kind of the perfect piece to kind of launch this more classical concert part of this channel. So from today, I'm going to be documenting the whole thing as a way of launching this classical concert part of my YouTube channel. We're going to talk about all the ideas, the sketches, the harmony, the structure, the orchestration decisions, and then even delve into practical things like the production of the performance materials, how to prepare for rehearsal, how to write a program note. Basically, I aim to share the whole process from start to finish, from the earliest sketches, where I'm at right now, to the final product being delivered to the brass bands later on this year. One reason I think I haven't shown this concert music side much is that the process looks so different to media music. Media music often starts at the keyboard and then straight into Logic, and sometimes the music stays in Logic. You build a mock-up, produce it, you're done. It's fast, and it's very screen-friendly for YouTube. Concert music, on the other hand, is often much more analog, certainly the way I do it. And I'm usually at the piano with manuscript paper. I'm sketching. I'm living inside the piece in a funny sort of way, dealing with harmony and structure for a while before I'm actually producing anything. It's a much slower process often than writing media music. And the big difference is this, I suppose. Concert music, if you're doing it right, which I hope to, ends up in front of live players 100% of the time. With media music, of course, you often involve live players, but it's not every time. This live element changes things. It slows down the process in a really good way, because the end goal isn't a polished mock-up. It's something real people will rehearse, interpret and perform, and eventually an audience will hear. So in these videos that are tilted more towards my concert hall music, you're going to see less computer, more paper, sometimes more thinking, more sketching, and a lot more of the decision-making that normally happens off camera. And I really hope you'll find it interesting for me to share this with you. And just for some context, I started out as a concert music composer, a classical composer, if you like. I got into composition really young, and I've been writing in that world since I was a teenager. I've written for orchestras, chamber groups, choirs, soloists, percussionists, saxophonists, you name it. I've worked with loads of brilliant ensembles, including, I'm really fortunate and proud to say, most of the BBC performing groups. So bringing this to the channel isn't a new hobby. It's me showing you a major part of my actual musical life, and it's one that is really kind of weirdly missing on this channel, I suppose, and I really want to correct that. I think it's quite exciting. I will say this up front, some of this is probably less sexy than my media music content. It's going to involve deeper chats about harmony, structure, pacing, orchestration, the psychology of choices I make, why one option feels right and another feels wrong, all that sort of thing. I'll of course keep it grounded, and I'll keep it as light as I can, but I'm not going to pretend this process is just presets and quick wins like you sometimes can get in media music. The point is to show you what writing a concert piece actually involves. Alongside this, I'm also going to start sharing a bit more of my teaching life. I've taught for a really long time, and I've taught at least conservatoire as well for years. And a lot of what I teach, in fact, my job there is to teach contemporary classical composition, which, when I think about it now, makes it even stranger that I rarely talk about that on this channel. Today is day one, no title, no notes written, scarily, just a blank page and a commission brief and a signed contract, which means I have to actually write something at some point. I'm going to start putting these ideas together at the piano, and I'll talk you through what I'm thinking and basically how I start writing a piece from scratch. Let's get started with that now. So welcome to what is probably the most exciting part of writing any piece, apart from when it's actually performed. And this is me with a totally blank manuscript paper. I genuinely really don't know what's going to happen this session. And that's the point of what I really want to show you with this more classical concert hall stuff is really my process, and how sometimes I really don't have a clue what's going to happen. So for me, harmony is one of the most important things to try and get right. For me, harmony is really, really critical, and that's often where I really start my process and my thinking. For me, it really kind of ratifies and defines what a piece can be, what it sounds like, how it sort of feels almost. And that's what I'm going to spend a bit of time doing today, and I'll talk you through what I'm sort of thinking. So we know the piece has to be quite kind of celebratory and uplifting, and it's opening a concert, and it is going to be written for a brass band, and it can be said sometimes that the brass band music can sometimes be quite conservative with a small c, and so I'm sort of thinking about how I can kind of react to that, and still write something which the band will enjoy playing, which is obviously important. They're paying me money for this, something that the audience enjoy, but also something which is still true to me. And that's a whole other kind of conversation to have when writing for a musical movement which has a lot of heritage and history, and how you sort of fit into that as a composer. And I think also something to be said that a lot of the music that's written for brass bands is written by brass banders, so people who already play in brass bands. So it's kind of a bit of a closed loop, I suppose, in some ways. So again, all these thoughts are kind of permeating in the back of my mind when I'm thinking about how I'm going to approach this piece, which I'm really excited to do. I love writing for brass. My dad's a professional trumpet player, so I've been listening to brass music in some form since I was a baby. So anyway, I digress a little bit. let's get into actually just kind of working out what... That was actually quite nice. Okay, I promise you it doesn't always... I'm just going to kind of muck around and basically just see what happens. Now, you're probably going to hear a lot of what I guess are called consonant chords. I guess the sort of the tonality of this is going to be, or I think my sort of initial thoughts are is it's going to have, it's only 4 minutes, 5 minutes, it's going to have a sort of an element of perhaps a fanfare to it, or, you know, some kind of celebration. And I think the harmony kind of reacts to that. Now, that doesn't mean that it's all just going to be sort of, you know, major chords the whole way through. We can write things which are still have kind of elements of tonality and maybe tonal centers, but can still kind of be interesting harmonically. Anyway, I'm just kind of drawn to this chord a little bit. So obviously this is kind of, I mean, the way that Stravinsky wrote is that everything, most of his music fits under the hand really well. And I suppose this is a chord which fits into my hand quite naturally, which I suppose is sort of interesting. You know, it's kind of just where my hand sort of sat. And actually, if I kind of analyze what it is, it's a tone, a fourth, a tone, another tone, a major third. So actually, even just kind of looking at it, I always kind of want to see what is making up a chord. And obviously this is kind of hinting at a modality quite strongly. I'm just going to kind of muck around with it for a bit. Because maybe the piece actually might start with a little sense of kind of angst. So it feels like it's kind of all the way through sort of trying to get somewhere. That could be quite interesting. Because I'm being really led, I think, that it is going to resolve perhaps into a big sort of C-sharp major world. I can still kind of keep the hint of the original. Okay, I'm just going to write the chord down and just sort of start walking around with it, perhaps. Okay, I think that's kind of... Again, that kind of hints at a nicer sort of chord. I prefer that. It's got a little bit more sort of depth to it. What I'm really trying to do in all of this is avoid octaves when I'm creating this. It's something that I've kind of really grappled with for a while, because if I put a really clear octave in my harmony, that really sticks out, doesn't it? That note becomes very clear. Now that could be useful as a colour thing, but when we're thinking about actually working out what harmony is going to be, want to generally just try and treat it kind of a bit mathematically and avoid octaves. Okay, so I'm just going to sort of do a little mathematical kind of workout. I'm going to do going to do something called chord rotations, which is something I've done for years. And for me, it's kind of something I've always come back to as a way of kind of generating harmony. So it's where I give each interval of the chord a number and then kind of work out. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll basically start at 0, work your way up. So the first one is 2. Then we move the numbers around. So 2, and a fourth is a 5. So we end up with these numbers which relate to the intervals of the chord. So we're actually sort of analysing and working out what the intervals are within this, which can be really useful when using chord rotations and this sort of thing. It's a good way of creating harmony which is very consistent, because all the chords, even though you create different chords, all the chords are born of like the same DNA. All the chords come from the same place, they're made up of the same intervals, but just in different orders, which can be quite interesting. So the number I've ended up with is 3, 4, 2, 2, 5, 2. And then we take the bottom number and we move it to the top. So we now have 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 5. So we have the same intervals, but they're in a different order now. So I'll write out that chord, and we keep the same bottom note. So we end up with the fourth, the perfect fourth that was the second interval, is now at the bottom. So we get a completely different kind of creation of a chord, or iteration of a chord, I suppose. And for me, this is just a really useful way of kind of getting to know the piece a little bit, or getting to know what the harmony could do. And what's really useful is you should always end up with the same top note and the same bottom note. So here's the first chord, the original one. And here's the next one, which has sort of changed. You can hear they're not totally dissimilar. It even fits really well under the hand again, because the intervals are sort of similar. So again, what I'm going to do, next thing is take the new bottom number, which is 5, and take it to the top again. So we end up with a new number, 5, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2. And we just do the same again. We end up with a chord which will kind of sound sort of similar. It's a really good way of starting off your day as well. If you're looking to not stare at your phone, this is a really good way of just kind of waking your brain up. So now we have 3 chords. So here's the original one, next one, next one. Not bad. Not great, but also not bad. So we'll do it again. Now we're kind of splitting up those collection of major seconds, which is quite nice. Okay, here I think we've ended up with our first octave. We have a really, really clear octave there. And what I do in this case, because for me, that really sticks out. It makes the chords kind of imbalanced in a funny sort of way, because you have a G sharp which becomes really important, and you actually don't want it to be important. It kind of, you're wasting notes. So I'm going to change it. My sort of rule of thumb is it goes up a semitone or down a semitone. I'm going to change it to up a semitone. And this means that when I come to do the iteration again, there will be another octave in there somewhere, and that's okay. We'll just keep using the same changes. But I quite like that it still has this sort of organic sort of shift to it. Okay, next one. The 2 comes up to the top. Okay, and we end up with another chord with another quite clear octave in it. think I'm going to change that note up to G. Okay, so now we've got these chords. That's the first one, which I still really like, to be fair. Played that wrong. Okay, and then we're kind of getting there. So 4 comes to the top. And this actually creates a chord which is completely white notes. Which I think is actually kind of cleansing from what came around it, but we do have a very clear octave again. So I'm going to change the top note. The last time I took it up a semitone, this time down a semitone. So it just keeps a little bit of the kind of crunch. Okay, and now if I bring the 3 back up to the top again, so I've got 3, 4, 2, 2, 5, 2, we're back to the original chords. So we have done a full rotation of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chords, all from this original chord, which makes sense because there are 6 intervals. So there's going to be 6 different iterations or ways that you can split this chord up. What's great about this is it gives me a framework to perhaps use this harmony going forward. Because all the chords kind of sound similar. Now that can be a problem because actually we don't always want harmony to sound similar. It can be good if you're writing a phrase or a section and you want it to have the same flavor, the same identity, but actually we want to have some contrast in here as well. We maybe want some more dissonance, some more sense of tension and release. That's a really important part of for me writing music is how do you kind of make things tense? How do you make things less tense? And that all comes down to sort of momentum and structure. If you're really trying to build towards a moment, well, you probably want it to be more tense, and that can be in your orchestration, but particularly in your harmony. You may have more dense harmony, which feels like it's unresolved and leading somewhere, and then perhaps resolves into harmony which is less tense, and then it kind of settles for a bit. And that's really the kind of conversation I'm sort of having with myself is, where is this sort of leading? So anyway, let's just go back to this sort of original. So I've kind of banked that, I have that there. Sort of thinking about what an opening sort of idea or motif for. And this is where I'm going to ignore the chord rotations that I've got. I've banked them. I've sort of done the work there, and I'll come back to them. But I'm just going to kind of allow my sensibilities to sort of take me. Well, I like that anyway, so I'm going to write that. It doesn't matter if it doesn't come from a sequence. I like that sort of resolution so from the original chord. Again, we're flirting with different kind of modes. I do think this piece is probably going to be sort of modally centered, and I have no kind of problem with that, if I'm honest. Again, it's to do with the sort of piece it is, the sort of commission it is, the sort of expectation. Oh, I almost prefer that. Oh, that's a nice alteration. So, okay. Resolving really clearly on a D major, major 7 chord. It's got me thinking. Because I like that one that I just wrote. Also, I'm trying to stay consistent with the number of notes I have each chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, this has got an octave in it. I should get rid of that. Again, I've broken my own rule and put an octave in. That's probably why it sounds so kind of final. But I actually prefer that chord, so we'll get rid of that top note. Kind of E natural at the top. I really like that. And actually, to a degree, they are sort of just a transposition of each. And if we look at kind of the construction of the intervals, close interval, wide interval, close interval, close interval, wide interval, close interval, wide interval, wide interval, close interval, wide interval. So there sort of could almost be sort of rotations of each other, which have been transposed. Let's keep this chromatic. No, maybe not. So I'm not talking, I'm kind of getting lost in my thoughts, and I know that doesn't make for a very good video, but this is the process. I'm going to write that, but I'm not convinced. But I quite like the sort of descending idea. That's wrong. That's better. I mean, these could be the chords at the very opening of the piece, like da-da-da-da-da-da. Like a kind of a flurry of kind of activity around it. I do have to remember this has got to be a happy piece. This harmony is pretty dark, really. Okay, it's not dark. It can really resolve somewhere. You know, that would work. Maybe we did something kind of bitonal. That could work. I'm not even thinking about sort of counterpoints or leading notes or, you know, how it's going to work. I'm really just being drawn by where my ear sort of thinks might kind of work. Already my mind's sort of taking me to a place that's sort of quite kind of angular, perhaps. Really kind of, I'm thinking, you know, my mind's sort of thinking of sort of the orchestration of it, I guess, a little bit of sort of lots of scalic kind of passages, kind of a real flurry, a real kind of onslaught of sound with it. And I think this harmony sort of lends itself to that, of a lot of activity. And obviously I'm playing these far quicker than these will actually be heard. I think these are going to be sort of big statement chords at the opening. And then of course I'm going to keep referring back to if these chords become important, these could be the sort of the DNA of the whole piece, the sort of genetics of it almost, which is actually kind of fun. Oh, okay, we got a good octave, but we'll get rid of that. Bit too whole tony. Bit too much of a change to go somewhere that's a bit dissimilar. Okay, that's more like it. That kind of poses a question. It does sort of resolve again. It's got that quite clear triad. C sharp major triad. I'm going to write it down. Again, just write everything down, doesn't. This is not the stage to be too picky about what things are, just really just a chance to get some material down. Just anything. I'll take anything just now. I've signed the contract. I need to get on with it. What's nice is I'm actually having to read the chords less. They're going in a bit now, which means that kind of process of absorbing them is actually really useful. Oh, I've got an octave, bloody octave. I actually prefer that chord. That really poses a question. Again, I'm talking about it in quite basic terms of that harmony poses a question. That's what I've sort of wanted to, sorry, I'm kind of lost in thought here. Kind of see how these are connected. I mean, this is not the melody. I'm just sort of trying to build in my mind how the chords could perhaps be connected at some time in the future, maybe. Kind of. And sort of almost kind of proving to myself that they, on a very basic level, do sort of work together, I think. And obviously I've gone down a route that is totally sort of unmathematical. But what I've kind of found with my kind of process is that if I want to sort of absorb the harmony, I have to do some of this kind of mathematical stuff, sort of work out. And obviously I've done it in a much more compressed way, and my mind is sort of taking me in these directions. But actually kind of often what I'll do is I'll spend quite a lot of time doing these chord rotations, and they may not even be sort of included as part of the piece at all, but it's part of the process of sort of learning how my harmony is, how it operates, how it works, what it does, how it sort of feels and how it sort of reacts to each other. And I know that sounds really kind of arty, but that's really kind of my process. Yeah, this is probably going to end up being waste product, but this is more where things might go, because I've sort of learned about how it works with this, sort of growing the harmony a little bit with this, and I'm sort of more used to the sound of what it could be, I guess, if that makes sense. It makes sense to me, and I guess it doesn't matter if it makes sense to any of the rest of you. It's just how I work, I guess, and for me, it's just harmony is just so important. So actually the opening could go in a different direction. You can really create a very, very dissonant chord. Big 8-note chord. Quite arresting. Can become a 9-note chord. And again, no octaves. There's a 10-note chord. I'm going to write that down because So I don't know why the keyboard stopped working there, but hopefully you can see it again now. So this is an extension of the first chord. I kind of like that. So I'm just going to, again, just scribble it down, and you see that things become a bit of a mess and a bit confusing about what kind of goes where. And often what I'll start doing is just kind of really writing things like orig, like original, and then adding stuff to it. And things get really messy. Okay, so that's a direction it could go. So I mean, it could go. You know, I can sort of imagine. Sort of an opening, kind of a sort of impactful. And then it arrives. At these other set of chords. Of course, I'm playing them way too fast. I can sort of, yeah, you can see how I'm sort of putting it together a little bit. I'm sort of solving some problems, or kind of getting more of a sense of what this could be, I suppose. So sort of starting. So actually, yeah, the harmony could start with a 9-note chord, and then 6-note, 6-note, 6-note. So we have kind of the harmony becoming less tense. So it starts really tense with this chord. And then does that actually kind of mean that 3 becomes important? You know, I've started with a 9-note chord and reduced it by 3 into 6. And then do I reduce this further into just a 3-note chord, or do I split it in half into? Or sometimes I could take the top 3 and swap them around with other chords, move them around, and then suddenly this idea of 3 is quite an arbitrary sort of thing. I've sort of realized, okay, I'm reducing by 3 notes in a chord, but then should 3 be something I kind of muck around with? Does 3 become important? Does the harmony become all about you know, different groups of 3-note chords? Sort of the same shape, and that gives it a consistency. And then just that thought of 3 being important is sort of another thing which I really encourage you to do as a composer, is to don't be too choosy or too precious about what you use to give you an idea or an inspiration or a way of sort of getting stuff down. You know, this is a tough art and a tough thing, and there's nothing more scary than blank manuscript paper. And if you just make an arbitrary decision, a simple decision, and there I was just like, okay, well, I've reduced by 3. 3 is going to become important. That's sort of quite an easy thing for us to suddenly go off and do. We're making it quite easy for ourselves. I didn't decide that 3 was important because of some mad academic idea. I just decided 3 was important because, well, I reduced the number in a number of notes in the chord by 3. Let's see where 3 takes us. And then suddenly, or we could decide harmony, which is purely based on thirds. So different types of thirds, for example. So major third, minor third, major third. Then, I mean, you could even go to augmented third, diminished third, I suppose. And then, you could even go to augmented third, diminished third, augmented third, major third, minor third, augmented third, diminished third, augmented third, major third, augmented third, diminished third, augmented third, major third, augmented third, diminished third, augmented third, major third, augmented third,
But that's technically all sort of triadic harmony, I guess. Doesn't all have to be major thirds. But again, that idea of having something simple and kind of limiting can be really beneficial. It's something I really try and get my students to do when I teach them, is that what you're trying to do is to make decisions easy for you. And that can often be just running with something almost for the sake of it, or almost just because you decided. The hardest pieces you'll ever write are ones where you have total freedom. The easiest pieces I've ever written are where I have a lot of decisions taken away from me, or I make decisions very early on. So things like even this brass band piece is easier to decide. I already know kind of what the sound's going to be because, or what the piece is going to sort of be because of the commission, because of the brief. And that's actually makes it really much easier to write. And then we kind of take these decisions. So deciding 3 becomes important, or I don't know, just deciding I'm only going to use quartal harmony. So harmony based on different types of fifths. So here's 1/5, a different fifth, another fifth. That's another way of keeping your harmony consistent. You can condense that chord, and then you've got more consistent harmony. And then, I don't know, quartal harmony or whatever you kind of need to make your music simple. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole, but I had a masterclass once, or a meeting once with the late great Oliver Nussin, and he said the most terrifying thing is blank manuscript paper. And now I don't have blank manuscript paper anymore. I have a rough idea of what it is, but the decisions that we make to make it easy can be really beneficial to us writing music, or more music, more easily. Anyway, I've gone down a huge rabbit hole about kind of harmony, and I don't even know if that made sense, but that's kind of the point of what this new part of the channel is going to be, that I'm just going to kind of say things as I feel necessary to say them, as a way of kind of unpacking what my thoughts might be. Anyway, now that I've had a wee chat and time away from the harmony, let's go back to it, because actually, no, we're going to start with this big bombastic opening, lots of kind of triplets, lots of energy. I do like the way that these chords connect. Okay, and now let's just keep I'm just thinking of or kind of improvising on melodic fragments. Now, okay, my ear's being drawn to this this ninth, but how idiomatic is that going to be when it's scored for brass? You know, you can imagine cellos would play that really easily, but it's maybe a slightly more awkward interval to write for brass. Now, I'm not saying impossible, but this is kind of my thought is already thinking, how, if this is going to be an important interval, how easy is it going to be? I want this piece to be performed a couple of times. It'd be nice. It's just kind of where my thought is. I'm not wanting to simplify my music or you know, make it simple or easier for the sake of it. But that's probably a difficult interval, or a less idiomatic interval to score for brass, perhaps. Okay, I like that. I'm just going to write that down as a melodic fragment. And what I'm doing is I'm numbering that as 1, so that it just shows that's the chord that's associated with it. So here's the chord. And then, does this connect into the next chord? Let's see. Sure does. But it's interesting to kind of see that sort of works. And yes, this is a contemporary composer writing a melody. Who would have known? Who would have guessed it? Repetition is a really useful thing. Gives it some consistency. Obviously, I'm sort of staying in the same sort of mode, the same chord. I'm just sort of seeing how long this melody can last with this chord. What I'm really thinking of is what gives this melody or this theme or whatever you want to call it, this motif, however you want to, whatever language you sort of use, what gives it its identifiable feature? What makes it kind of could potentially be an earworm or something that audiences remember? It's something I'm really interested in when I'm writing any sort of music, and this is media music, classical music, concert music, theatre music, whatever. Consistency is really key. Consistency is such an important thing when we're writing music. I so often have students who, at the early kind of stages of their career, will come and they'll write a melody like this, and then 2 bars later they've gone on to a totally separate new idea, which is not linked at all in any way to what comes before it. And it's something which I really love teaching, is actually sort of how to develop your musical idea, how to make it last longer, how to keep the same idea kind of flourishing and blossoming and growing for a while. So I'm writing in quite a kind of, tonally centered, consonant sort of world. So that does kind of make it easier. But what I'm looking at is this shape of the 3 semiquavers is, I think, kind of identifiable. And then I'm going to expand that in the next phrase a little bit. 1, 2, 3. 3 semiquavers again, but sort of flipped around. And it's enough of a development that it hopefully sounds the same, but kind of a development, an organic sort of growth of what came before. And then the same shape. And again, this is all still in the same harmony. And often I'll kind of take a fragment of the opening kind of bar and tag it in here because it keeps it consistent. It keeps it kind of the same. So this is me tagging in the same idea. Okay, so this all goes with one chord, and this is just such a rough sketch. Now, not the best melody I've ever written, and I hope, but over time it'll morph and change, and I don't think it'll stay in one chord the whole time. So maybe in the second half we change to this second chord, or we go to one of these kind of rotated chords. Because now I've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 chords. That's enough for a piece, basically. This is the genetics of the whole thing here. This melody, this shape. I'm going to see how long I can write this melody, but just using that shape. So again, I'm sort of staying in the same sort of mode as the original chord, but that kind of shows you where my thinking sort of is, that actually a good melody can literally just have the same rhythmic identity, the same shape. And this is something I'm really watching out for in my music. So I've done about an hour now, and it doesn't look like I produced that much. You know, I've kind of got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 9 chords and 4 bars. But I think I sort of know the piece a lot more. I've sort of maybe made some decisions about certainly what the harmony is going to be, certainly in maybe the opening of it, you know, this kind of quite dense sort of opening. You know, later on today when I come and write a little bit more of it and decide this is absolutely rubbish. But this could all end up being kind of deleted, but it's all part of the process. It's all part of the sort of the generation. It's all part of the sort of the waste product, possibly, which sounds like a terrible thing to call music that I've just spent an hour sort of thinking about. But this could end up being waste product, and that's all part of the process. But I hope you enjoyed this sort of more in-depth look into my approach to how I write this sort of concert music, and you know, it's a much lighter version of some of the other concert pieces that I normally sometimes write. You know, I've kind of picked this brass band piece as I think it'll be hopefully a fairly sort of accessible way of getting you into how I write concert music. I think I need to script this out a bit more. I'm blabbing on like nothing else. Anyway, if you've got any questions or comments, let me know. I do also have space open in my online composition tutorial studio, and I would love for you to reach out to me. You can find the details down below if you're interested in lessons on media music, concert music, anything like that. The links to my website's down below, and you can let me know. I do have space for a limited number of students, and it'd be great to hear from you.
If you're into this, let me know in the comments, because it'll really help me shape how I present the concert music series going forward. I really hope you enjoy the addition of the concert hall classical side of my music here. This is just, I suppose, the channel becoming more honest about what I actually do as a musician and a composer. Thanks so much for coming. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.